You're standing at a pharmacy counter. The receipt prints. $280 for a 20-minute doctor visit and 2 prescriptions. You check your phone. Bank balance, $91. Rent is due in 4 days. You do the math in your head. If you pay this bill, you'll be $189 short on rent. Late fee, $75. Total damage, $355. But if you skip it, maybe the symptoms will just go away. So you fold the receipt, walk out, and hope. This happens 127 million times a year in America. It's not a choice, it's a calculation. And that calculation has a price that compounds far beyond $280. I'm Mike. Over the past year, I've been tracking something economists call a cost cascade. The way a small expense you can't afford today creates exponentially larger expenses tomorrow. Not because of bad decisions, but because of bad math. If you've ever felt like your paycheck disappears faster than it arrives, or if one unexpected bill could unravel your entire month, this pattern is already running in your life. You just haven't seen the equation yet. That decision, to skip the doctor bill and hope it resolves itself, it happens because of something economists have started tracking more closely over the past decade. In 2023 alone, Americans paid $37.8 billion in late fees, overdraft charges, and emergency costs that wealthier people simply never encounter. Not because they're smarter with money, because they have enough of it to avoid the penalties in the first place. There's a name for this dynamic, the Cost Cascade. When you don't have a financial buffer, a single small expense doesn't just cost what's on the price tag. It triggers a chain reaction of larger expenses, each one compounding the damage from the last. Let me show you how this works with something as simple as a winter coat. According to Consumer Reports, a quality down jacket, the kind that costs around $180, has an average lifespan of 10 years with normal use. That breaks down to $18 per year. But if you can't afford $180 up front, you're buying the $35 polyester jacket from the discount store. That one lasts maybe 1 season, sometimes 2 if you're careful. Over the same 10-year period, you've spent $350 on coats, nearly double. And here's the thing, you've been colder the entire time, because cheap insulation doesn't perform the same way. This isn't about being wasteful, it's math. When you lack liquidity, you're forced to pay a premium on almost everything you buy, not because the product is different, but because you can't access the lower per unit cost that comes with buying quality or buying in bulk. And winter coats are just the beginning. This pattern shows up everywhere, in ways that add up faster than most people realize. Take something as basic as laundry detergent. At Sam's Club, you can buy a 150-load jug for $22. That comes out to about 15 cents per load. But if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you don't have $22 to tie up in detergent inventory. You have $4. So you buy the 10-load bottle from Dollar Store, which costs 40 cents per load. A family of 4 doing 6 loads a week, that's 312 loads a year. Do the math. With the bulk option, you're spending $46.80 annually. With the small bottles, you're paying $124.80. That's an extra $78 a year, just because you didn't have $22 up front. Now let's look at the banking system, because this is where the structure really punishes you. Most banks charge a $12 monthly maintenance fee if your account balance drops below $500. That's $144 a year. Meanwhile, someone with $5,000 in their account pays 0 fees, and actually earns around $25 a year in interest at the current average rate of 0.5%. The net gap between these two people? $169 annually. And the only difference is having that initial $500. But it gets more serious when you're dealing with actual emergencies. According to Pew Research, 12 million Americans use title loans every year. Here's how the math works. You need $2,500 for an emergency. You take out a title loan, that's a loan secured by your car title, at 25% interest per month. That's a 300% annual percentage rate. You can't pay it back within 3 months. The lender repossesses your $6,000 car, and you still owe the remaining balance on the loan. You didn't just lose the car. You lost your ability to get to work, which means you lost your income, which means the debt keeps growing. This is the cost cascade in full effect. It's not a series of isolated bad choices. It's a system where one insufficient payment creates the conditions for the next, larger one. Here's something that might surprise you. The cost cascade isn't just about being poorer than someone wealthier than you right now. It's about being poorer than your own parents were at your age, even when you're earning more money. Take 2 people, both 30 years old. John, in 1985, making $25,000 a year. Emily, in 2025, making $50,000. On paper, Emily earns double. But look at what actually happens when they try to build a life. Housing. In 1985, the median home price was around $75,000. For John, that's 3 times his annual salary. He could save for a down payment, get approved for a mortgage, and own a home by age 25. In 2025, the median home price is $420,000. For Emily, that's 8.4 times her salary. Banks won't even approve her for a mortgage until she has significantly more saved. She won't be able to buy until she's 38, if she's lucky. Education. John's 4-year degree at a public university cost $10,000 total. He could work part-time during summers and cover half of it. He graduated with maybe $5,000 in debt, if any. Emily's 4-year degree cost $90,000. Even working part-time, she can only cover about 13%. She graduates with $37,000 in student loans at 6% interest. That's an anchor she's dragging for the next decade. Healthcare. John paid $60 a year out of pocket for employer-provided insurance. His deductible was $200. If he had a kid, it cost him around $500 out of pocket. Emily pays $2,160 a year for her share of premiums. Her deductible is $3,500. If she has a kid, she's looking at $5,000 to $8,000 in out-of-pocket costs. Do the math on all 3. What John called a middle-class lifestyle, owning a home by 30, being debt-free after college, starting a family without financial panic. That's now an upper-middle-class luxury for Emily. She earns twice as much in nominal dollars. But the treadmill sped up, and wages didn't. This is what people mean when they say it's harder now. Not emotionally harder, mathematically harder. The same goals require exponentially more capital than they did 40 years ago. And that gap? It's only widening. The cost cascade doesn't just drain your wallet, it drains your ability to make decisions. Every choice you make throughout the day burns through a finite resource in your brain called glucose. And when you're financially stressed, you're making hundreds more micro decisions than someone with money. Buy milk today or wait until tomorrow? Put $5 or $10 in the gas tank. Pay the phone bill now or hope they don't disconnect. By 2 in the afternoon, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic and planning, has basically shut down. What takes over is the amygdala, which handles fear and reflexes. You're no longer operating on strategy. You're operating on survival. There's a study out of Israel that tracked parole decisions by judges over the course of a day. In the morning, 65% of cases were granted parole. By late afternoon, that number dropped to 10%. Same judges, same types of cases. The only variable that changed was glucose levels in their brains. When their mental energy was depleted, they defaulted to the safest, easiest decision: deny. This is why taking out a payday loan at 400% APR isn't necessarily a stupid decision. It's the decision your brain makes when it's running on fumes, when the prefrontal cortex is checked out and the amygdala is screaming for immediate relief. You're not weighing future costs. You're trying to silence the pain right now. And here's the part that really matters. Even after you escape the financial stress, your brain doesn't immediately reset. Research from Princeton shows it takes 6 to 18 months for your decision-making patterns to normalize after a period of scarcity. Your brain has been rewired to operate in survival mode, and it takes time to learn that it's safe to think long-term again. The cost cascade doesn't just show up in what you buy, it shows up in how you earn. And nowhere is this more visible than in the gig economy, where the promise of flexibility hides a structure that externalizes almost every cost onto the worker. Take someone driving for Uber full-time. The app shows you a nice big number at the end of the week, $847 earned. That feels good. That looks like $21 an hour if you worked 40 hours. But that's gross income, not net. And the difference is staggering. Start with gas. At current prices, driving 1,200 miles a week costs about $180. Vehicle maintenance accelerates when you're putting that many miles on your car. Oil changes every 3 weeks instead of every 3 months. Tires every 6 months instead of every 3 years. Brakes wearing down twice as fast. That's another $60 a week. Then there's depreciation. Your car loses value faster when it's a commercial vehicle. A car you bought for $18,000 is worth $6,000 after 2 years of rideshare driving. That's $115 a week in lost asset value. Now add the costs that a traditional employer would cover. Self-employment tax, because you're paying both sides of Social Security and Medicare, $69 a week. Health insurance with no employer subsidy, $88 a week. And 0 paid time off, 0 retirement matching, 0 workers' compensation if you get injured. When you subtract all of that, the $847 turns into $310. That's $6.20 an hour, below minimum wage. Compare that to a regular W-2 job paying $16 an hour. On paper, Uber looks better, $40,000 annually versus $33,000. But when you factor in employer-provided benefits, health insurance, retirement matching, paid time off, payroll tax contributions, that $16 job is actually worth $39,000 in total compensation. While the Uber income, after all real costs, nets out to $14,880. The gig economy is profitable because it transfers costs that used to be on the company's balance sheet onto yours, and the app makes it invisible by showing you the big number up front and letting you discover the real number slowly, one expense at a time. This is the cost cascade built into the employment structure itself. The cost cascade doesn't stop with you. It programs itself into the next generation through 3 specific channels that researchers at Harvard have been tracking for decades. The first channel is physical space. A small rental apartment with no separate rooms means your kid doesn't have a quiet place to study. Research from Stanford shows that children without dedicated study space score 23% lower on math assessments by middle school. By age 18, that gap has widened to 2.5 years of learning. Not because they're less capable, because they've been doing homework at the kitchen table while dinner is being made and the TV is on. Second channel is information access. When you're working 3 jobs to stay afloat, you're not at parent-teacher conferences. You're not hearing about scholarship deadlines or internship programs. Your kid misses doors that never even appear on their radar. These aren't locked doors. They're invisible ones. And they don't open just because your child is smart or hardworking. They open because someone told you they existed. Third channel is the decision-making pattern you pass down. When every choice you make is about minimizing immediate risk rather than maximizing long-term gain, your child learns that algorithm. By 18, it's hardwired. They see a job offer that pays today and a college acceptance that costs money up front. They choose the job. Not because they don't value education, because they've learned to choose safety over potential. They're repeating your survival strategy, even when survival isn't the only option anymore. Economist Raj Chetty's research shows that a child experiencing all 3 of these channels has a 40 times lower probability of escaping poverty compared to a child with the same IQ from a middle-class family. 40 times. Not because of intelligence, because of infrastructure. So when you take out that car loan at 24% interest because you need to get to work, you're not just paying interest. You're paying with your child's quiet study room. You're paying with the time you'd otherwise spend learning about their school opportunities. You're paying by teaching them that the safe choice is always better than the right choice. The cost cascade doesn't end. It replicates. So here's the escape route. And it's not about motivation or discipline or cutting out coffee. It's about understanding that your first $850 is worth more than your next $10,000. That sounds wrong, but the math checks out. When you have $0 in your account and a $500 emergency hits, your options are expensive. Payday loan at 400% APR costs you $650. Credit card cash advance costs you $600. Selling your laptop at a loss costs you $500 now, plus whatever you needed that laptop for. But when you have $850 in your account and that same $500 emergency hits, you pay $500. That's it. You've just saved yourself $150 to $500 per emergency. If emergencies happen twice a year, and for most people they do, that's $300 to $1,000 saved annually. That's a 30 to 100% return on your $850. No stock market investment gives you 100% risk-free return. But that first buffer does. The value curve is steep at the bottom and flattens out fast. $0 to $850, you're earning 50 to 100% returns by avoiding fees and penalties. $850 to $3,000, you're earning 20 to 30% by buying bulk and reducing smaller fees. $3,000 to $10,000, you're down to 10 to 15%. Above $10,000, you're in the normal 3 to 8% range of standard investing. This is why getting to that first threshold matters more than anything else you'll do financially. So what are the actual steps? 3 things, in order. First, map your financial leaks. Pull up your bank statement. List every recurring charge, subscriptions you forgot about, services you don't use. Target is to find $50 to $100 a month. That's $600 to $1,200 a year. Second, plug your biggest leak first. If you have a title loan at 300% APR, eliminating that is your highest return move. Every dollar you free up by killing that debt is a dollar that stops multiplying against you. Third, build to 850. That's the liquidity threshold where the cost cascade loses most of its power over you. After that, you can think about investing, retirement accounts, all the normal financial advice. But until you hit that threshold, standard advice doesn't apply to you. You're playing a different game with different rules. This isn't about becoming rich. This is about becoming unfragile, about reaching the point where one bad week doesn't destroy the next 6 months. Build the buffer. Then build the life. That's the individual exit. But there's a question that sits underneath all of this. If the cost cascade functions the way we've described, if 14.2 million Americans are working jobs that don't pay enough to live on, then what happens if everyone escapes? Who does the $12 an hour work? How does the system adjust? I don't have an answer to that. And I'm not sure anyone does. But I know this much. Understanding the trap isn't the same as accepting it. It's about seeing the structure clearly enough to move through it differently. And maybe, if enough people see it, to change it. That's why this video exists. If you know someone who's in the cascade, share it.